Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Mets Daily on the Fan Arts Network. John Saponaro here with you today and every day to talk about our New York Mets. But of course, before we get started, a quick shout out goes to our friends over at Kalshi for sponsoring the video for a limited time. Use the code FANARTSBASEBALL on the Kalshi app to get $10 when you trade 10. The New York Mets are off yesterday, Monday, after wrapping up that 3-game set in the south side of Chicago, where they dropped 2 of those 3 games in annoying fashion. We talked about it on yesterday's show, and that means that today they kick off a new series and a new homestand against one of the best teams in the National League, one of the best teams in Major League Baseball, and over the last handful of years, one of the best run organizations and best put together baseball teams in the Milwaukee Brewers. So we'll take today's opportunity on the show to do a little bit of a series preview with a different twist and talk about some burning issues as it relates to not only this series coming up with Milwaukee, but just sort of the overarching view as we are really down to the home stretch of the 2026 season, 30 some odd games left to play. And we'll start with Kodai Senga. Kodai Senga is a guy who has been much maligned in his Mets tenure of late. He's a guy who I have said time and time again that I kind of want off this team. I want to turn the page from him. But he's also a guy who I've given a tremendous amount of credit and kudos to over how he has taken to not only this short stint leverage reliever role that they really threw in his lap as soon as the trade deadline was over, but then because of the injury to Devin Williams, how he's taken to the closer's role. I said that he's just the right amount of quirky, his stuff plays up, all of the things that you look for in a closer, but I wasn't ready yet to anoint him as the closer. I wasn't ready yet to anoint him as a setup guy in 2027. I wasn't ready yet to say, this guy is in X role or Y role in 2027. I do think Kodai Senga has shown enough that he can be in your bullpen in 2027, mostly because you have him under contract. You have to pay him anyway. So why not, in what he has shown in this small sample size, say, you know what? Air it out for 1 inning at a time, throw the ghost fork, throw damn near 100 miles an hour, and just get outs. Because I think he can be successful at that. Now, do I think he can be a successful closer or a successful leverage inning guy? That's where I fall short. I said as much, but I wanted to take this opportunity to just point out that this is why. It's the giving up the runs in the 5-run lead game that the Mets had over the weekend, where he didn't look sharp. He didn't look his best. It wasn't a safe situation. That's something that makes you go, okay, not great, but whatever. And then they use him on back-to-back days, and he gives up the walk-off home run in the 1-0 game. And there's just a part of the Kodai Senga experience we have seen as Mets fans the best of what he can bring, and we have seen the absolute worst. And a lot of times when people say that about a pitcher or a team or a player or whatever, it's hyperbole. But for Mets fans and Kodai Senga, it's not. We have seen him in his major league career be the absolute best version of what he can be. And geez, if that's not the worst version, if we haven't seen the worst version of Kodai Senga, I don't know what the worst version would look like. So his stumbles over the weekend are everything you need to know about why you should be optimistic, but you should be cautious in doing so. Because while I think the talent is very much there, and while I think that the role really does suit him, and when I say role, again, I mean single inning relief pitcher, I don't know if it's all going to come together where you can go, forget about Devin Williams, Kodai Senga is our closer. Or we're going to go out and we're going to get Adrian Morejon, and Kodai Senga is going to be the other guy. One's going to pitch in the 7th, one's going to pitch in the 8th, and that's how we're going to do. I'm not there yet, man. Because it's outings like the 2 that we saw over the weekend where I'm like, this Kodai Senga not quite right. This Kodai Senga not throwing hard. This Kodai Senga no confidence can rear its ugly head at any moment. And so I'm not prepared to give him any kind of role and lock anything in stone. Not yet. He hasn't earned it. Quite frankly, he does not deserve it. And speaking of which, I've always talked about it on this show. I love the extra stuff. We talked about it yesterday with Jeffrey Yan. I like a closer's entrance. I think a closer's entrance is cool. I think it's something that's commonplace in baseball. Most guys have it. But I do think this thing with Kodai Senga, with Beat It, with getting a relief pitcher closer's entrance is a little premature. because of everything we just talked about. He's got like 4 major league saves. He was given this role just out of necessity. We don't know if he's going to be in this role. I don't know that we need to give this guy. Look, every player has walk-up music when they hit. Every pitcher, relief pitcher, has music that they come into. But this idea that we're giving Kodai Senga any sort of entrance that we're going to like look to and celebrate, let's pump the brakes a little bit. This is kind of a little bit like giving yourself a nickname. You know, it's got to be a little bit more organic than that. I just want to see it happen over a little bit of a longer course of time. And so while I think that there is maybe something in here that the Mets can unlock in 2027, I fall short of what specific role it's going to be. And I think everybody should temper their expectations just a little bit on Kodai Senga, acknowledging fully that he's going to be on this team and he's going to be in the bullpen because the Mets are paying him $15 million. And it doesn't really make sense to pay him to go pitch somewhere else if you can get anything out of him at all. Now, as the Mets open up this 3-game set, is coming up shortly, few hours, I guess. They are in for a tall task. They are facing a 3-headed monster of Milwaukee Brewers pitching, and it is going to be closed out by the best of the bunch. And they got Kyle Harrison tonight going against Zach Thornton, and then you've got Dustin May, whose numbers don't look pretty, but you know Dustin May's got the stuff. Dustin May is a guy who throws. I think I previewed this maybe prior to joining Mets Daily. I don't remember exactly when Dustin May was on his previous team, but he's a guy who throws his fastball and he throws it hard, and the Mets have had a hard time hitting pitchers like that. And so, you know, Dustin May is a tough customer for the New York Mets. He's facing off against Robert Stock, which also gives the Brewers the advantage. And then in the final game of the series, you've got Jacob Mizorowski, who's probably going to win the Cy Young, going against Sean Manaea. So the Mets are facing this 3-headed monster that is going to give them a lot of fits in this series. Kyle Harrison has allowed 3 earned runs or fewer in 19 of his 20 starts. I'm going to give you that again. In 19 of his 20 starts on the year, Kyle Harrison has allowed 3 earned runs or fewer. So he's a guy who, I don't know, in some circles, maybe in Milwaukee, maybe in Wisconsin, they're talking about him, but in some circles, I don't think he's being talked about enough for how good he's been. Now, he is going up against Zach Thornton. Zach Thornton did throw 6 scoreless innings against this Brewers team about a month ago. He picked up his first major league win there. And so we know what Zach Thornton is capable of. We know he's a strike thrower. We know he's going to pound the zone. We know he's going to use his entire arsenal. We know he can get good lineups out. And the Brewers, for all of their ability, the Brewers are a team that sometimes impresses you with the way they play, and sometimes they very much don't impress you. They'll come out, they'll beat your team, but then you're like, this is the team with the best record in Major League Baseball? Now, sometimes you'll play them, and you'll watch this 3-game set, and you're like, my God, this team is so well run. They're so well coached. They're so this, they're so that, and they look like a machine. And then sometimes you watch them, and you're like, yeah, they're winning, but like, I don't think this team's very good. So I think Zach Thornton can do what he did a month ago. I think he could do it again. But then the question becomes, how do the Mets find a path to victory? And I think that's why I call it this 3-headed monster, because Zach Thornton in this first game kind of gives the Mets the best opportunity starting pitching wise to win. Because yeah, again, you look at Dustin May and the numbers aren't great and the ERA is not great and whatever, but he's going up against Robert Stock. And you got to give Robert Stock credit for what he's done, but you got to give the edge to the Brewers. You have to give the edge to Dustin May. And then, yeah, Sean Manaea has been a lot better, and Sean Manaea had that one blow-up inning against Chicago, but he's facing Jacob Mizorowski, and that's case closed, end of story. So I think when you look at where this series is right now, it is going to be 2 things. Which Brewers team shows up? Is it going to be the all-impressive Brewers team? And if that's the case, the Mets probably get swept. But then the other part of this is, do the Mets get anything that resembles keeping them in the game with their starting pitching, knowing that the Brewers have the advantage in every outing? Because I got news for you guys. The Brewers don't have to be the well-oiled machine Brewers to sweep this series, because they have the pitching advantage, the starting pitching advantage in each and every single one of these 3 games. Now, baseball season is here, and you can trade every game on Kalshi. You know what I do? I sit down to record the show, but before I hit record, I take a look at the Kalshi app and I see if there's something with good value, something that's fun, something that's interesting, hopefully something that's all 3 to do with our New York Mets. Now, for all the reasons I just outlined, the odds do not favor the New York Mets in this game tonight. They are at 40%, trading at 40 cents a share for a New York Mets victory. Now, if you believe in Zach Thornton, if you believe in some of the paths to victory that I laid out, if you think that the Mets will hit Kyle Harrison and do something that a lot of teams haven't been able to do and put up some runs on him this season, well, then $100 will get you $244. And I do think that is good value. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning that there is no house, and as the probability changes, you can trade into and out of your position for a limited time. Use the code FANARCHBASEBALL on the Kalshi app to get $10 when you trade 10. Kalshi. Kalshi. Trade on anything, must be 18 and over. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Must be 18 and over. Like I said, event contract trading involves risks and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. Now, I don't want to be a downer. I've said that time and time and time again. But for everything we talked about a moment ago, I think that there is a chance, and it's a better than average chance, that this series may just be the swan song for the New York Mets 2026 season. And why do I say that? It's because the Mets have no room for error. We know that. The Mets have less than no room for error with regards to this miracle that some people are hanging on to, that the Mets can make the playoffs. The chances of that happening were slim. The chances of that happening were infinitesimal before the trade deadline. It became much more unlikely after the trade deadline, but then they went on that run. But with every loss, it's just harder and harder. The Mets have to play 700 baseball. The Mets have to go 27 and 4 or whatever in their last handful of games. It's an unbelievable run, and they're going to have to do it against really good competition. And so when they have a series like they did against the White Sox, where all 3 of those games were winnable, but they only won 1, their miracle takes a hit. And so I talked about why I think the Mets can get swept in this series, even if they don't see the best the Brewers have to offer. If they get swept, it's over, guys. So look, I've been real about this the whole time. It's probably over already, most likely over already, but the Mets cannot get swept. The Mets can't get swept in this series or any series in the next month. The Mets can't, so again, I don't want to ruin anybody's fun. This team is fun right now. It's enjoyable to watch. And if part of your enjoyment is taking in the fact that maybe they've got a miraculous run in them, I am not going to tell you not to believe in that. But I am going to tell you to be careful, because I don't want you to fall flat on your face. And this is just another version of me doing that, because this series can go poorly for the New York Mets. And if it does, I think that's going to be all she wrote. Not mathematically, but basically. Now, just to be fair, if the Mets were ever to sweep this series or whatever, obviously that's going to make people believe. So I hope that the latter happens. I hope the Mets sweep the Brewers. I do. But I just don't see it happening. And for that, just be careful and be guarded. Last but certainly not least here today, Jonah Tong has been doing his thing over the last month or so in AAA. And the numbers are good, not great. We know Jonah Tong's prospect status has slipped. He went from being the number 1 or the number 2 guy to the number 3, the 4, the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9. Probably not out of the top 10 on any of the lists that I've seen, and he doesn't deserve to be out of the top 10, but his stock has taken a massive hit. He's had a very up and down season. He's had, forget about the numbers, the inability to develop that extra pitch, that other thing he needs to be a true starting pitching weapon, hasn't been there. But coming off of what has been a pretty good run for him, a good month, I think the Mets need to give him a shot in September, because I just think there's value in seeing what he does against better lineups, seeing what he does with the major league pitching coach and the major league pitching coaching the brass. I think there's value in being on the team and in the dugout with Nolan McLean, who's a rookie, having success, and Christian Scott, who's not a rookie technically, but for all intents and purposes is a rookie and having success. Zach Thornton, who's a rookie and is having success. Sean Manaea, who is a guy who has been through the wars. He's been a successful starter, a successful reliever. He's been on the periphery of rosters. He's been a long man. He's done everything. And he's a good guy and he's a good teammate. And I think there's something to be said for getting him up here and just seeing what you got. You know, he doesn't need to be firmly in the Mets' plans in 2027. Nothing he does over this last month should, make the Mets say, hey, we don't need pitching. We got Jonah Tong now. I'm not saying that, but I just don't know what else AAA can offer for him right now. I think he's had the season he's had, and it's sort of the antithesis of what happened last year. Last year, he was the best pitcher in the organization, and they said, you know what? Screw it. We need a pitcher, need one desperately up here right now. It's a lot of pressure for the kid. He's young, but we're going to get him up here. We're going to do that. I almost think that you should repay the favor now. The situations could not be more flipped. He's had a bad year. Overall, the numbers don't look great. The under the hood stuff is fine, whatever, but still not great. The major league team is a disaster. They're not going anywhere. You called him up last time, put all the pressure in the world on his shoulders. Call him up now with no pressure and say, hey, kid, look, you did us a big time favor last year. We threw you into the fire. Now we want you to just come up here, be who you are. You're not going to get sent down. Doesn't matter if you pitch 5 innings, 6 innings, 3 innings. Doesn't matter if you give up home runs. Obviously, they're not going to leave him out there to dry, like hang him out there to dry. But I think they should just bring him up and just let whatever is going to happen, happen. Will they do it? I'm not sure. But I do think that's what they should do, especially when they can add a couple roster spots coming up in a few days in September. But Zach Thornton is going to be here in the rotation for the rest of the season. He's going to get those starts. Christian Scott's going to get those starts. Nolan McLean's going to get those starts. Sean Manaea, doesn't have to, but he should because he's going to be here next year. Who knows about Robert Stock? Robert Stock can be your long man next year. Robert Stock might be on another team. Robert Stock might be pitching in another country. You keep him on the roster, of course. I'm not saying you cut this guy, but maybe you piggyback them. Give Jonah Tong the starts and start to line them up. It won't happen right away because they're not pitching on the same turn right now. But give Jonah Tong starts and let Robert Stock be his caddy. And if Jonah Tong gets bombed in the second inning, he doesn't have it, bring in Robert Stock, let him pitch 4 innings, 5 innings in relief, whatever. Keep him stretched out. I don't think that's insane. And you know what? If Tong is great, he's still not going to go super deep in games. So if Tong comes up and he pitches 5 innings and gives up 1 run and the Mets are winning, 5-1, whatever, bring in Robert Stock and see if he can finish the game. Keep him stretched out that way. That's what I'd like to see. I think it makes all the sense in the world. We'll see if they do it. I think they will. I think once the calendar turns to September, which now is only like 6 days away, about a week, this is something the Mets probably could have done this week. It's something the Mets probably could have done last week even. It's, if you want to get really picky, the Mets could have even probably done this right after the trade deadline. They decided not to, but I think they're kind of holding off the inevitable because I think Tong still has development to do in AAA. I'm not saying he won't be right back there next season, and he should be based on the year he had, but I think there is development that he can get, and there's valuable experience that he can learn at the big league level right now in the final month of the season. That's going to do it for this episode of Mets Daily. If you haven't already, subscribed to the channel, sitting at just over 4,000 subscribers, trying to get to 5,000 by the end of the season. We'd love to see that happen, but more importantly, we'd love to see you become a part of this growing community. Until next time, I'm John Saponaro. See you tomorrow.